Am I ready?
You're
Never. Ready's all over me.
okay. It is Tuesday, September 5th, 2023, 6:37. We are going to call the regular council meeting to order. Ms. Monroe, if you could call the roll.
Here, Don Barnard.
Here.
John Merriman.
Here.
Eric Hendren.
Here.
Charlie Campbell.
Here.
Nicole Shuck.
Here.
Bob Orsini.
Here.
Ryan Green.
Here. Before we get to the invocation tonight, I'd like to make an announcement. First, to congratulate Ryan and Heather Green on the birth of their son, Thomas William Green, on August 26th. If you pray for Ryan, because the baby is in the NICU for at least a month. And also, if anyone here remembers, Bailey Moreland, who was our planner, who left this past year, her and her husband Austin had a baby on September 2nd, a Grace Elaine Moreland. So we had two new arrivals of people who've been here. So if we could have Pastor Larry Griffin from the Johnstown Baptist Church offer the invocation.
And if you don't mind, while praying, I'm going to include a little prayer for Ryan
Thank you.
and Heather. Father God, we live in an interesting time, a time of great change. And in our community, certainly we face a lot of issues and a lot of misinformation, and a lot of wishes and wants of how we can proceed. And so we ask your presence with even this body as they make their decisions and recommendations. Lord, as they come together as a group, we recognize that they carry with them some baggage that we don't even know how much it will affect the life of this community. But we want to pray for Ryan and Heather and their little boy as they raise him. It's fun to hear a father say, I don't know what to do, never been there, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Oh boy, there's going to be a lot that'll happen over the next 20 years with that little man. And so we pray that you and your wife, that Ryan and his wife would have the resources they need, have the support they need. And Father, we ask your presence in this meeting. We call together as an invocation, we call for you to be with us. You've promised that where we meet in your name, you would be there. But Lord, even if this meeting is not about your name, we pray that you will be present with us, giving us strength of courage, giving us determination, and always the spirit of wanting to do what's best for the community and our neighbors. These and all things we pray in your precious name. Amen.
Would you please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on the agenda is action on minutes. Ms. Monroe sent out the July 18th, 2023 minutes. Do we have any changes or updates to the minutes? Hearing none, do we have a motion on the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Charlie Campbell.
Yes.
Nicole Shuck.
Yes.
Bob Orsini.
Yes.
John Merriman.
Yes.
Mayor Barnard.
Yes.
Ryan Green.
Yes.
Aaron Hendrick.
Yes.
Next is citizen comments on matters not on the agenda. Before we get started tonight, I would like to say something with this. I know there are a lot of emotions created recently by the annexation request, as well as the PD district application as before zoning and planning, and this very council. There can be little doubt we are faced with some very big decisions. And we want you to know that all of us up here realize that and want to get this right. I would first like to ask that everyone take a moment to consider what you would do if you were sitting in the very seat that we are. With each decision made, there is a multitude of consequences, some good and some bad. Within the current landscape, there appears to be only 3 decisions available for this council and zoning and planning. The first is to say no to all development. The second is try to work through and understand the development that is being proposed. And third, allow for all development without any restrictions. In option 1, there's a heavy reality that if we say no to all development, We will be on the outside looking in as other parties develop and impact the land around us. This land is Johnstown, and it is way too valuable not to be developed. If we say no, it will be only temporary until other options are explored with other municipalities or townships that will allow it to be developed. The second option would be to lean into development. Not all development, but some development, which identifies in whole or in part the community's vision for development in our area. Taking into consideration the financial impacts both to the city and the school, this is our land. And we have a vision that allows us to work with developers to ensure our vision is met. And that's very important. The third option is to open the floodgates to every type of a development and allow the market to run the show with little input from our collective community. Outside of this, there are no real options on this land that is located near us, and that is Johnstown. This land is located near other municipalities and has access to water and sewer by other providers. There are very real consequences that exist with each decision, as well as potential rewards. Right now is not the time to be divided. Now is the time to be united, so we can face these challenges together and build a community that our future generations will be proud of long after we are gone. For our first speaker tonight, we have a Mr. Mike Dixon. If you would like to come up and offer your comments. And a reminder that each of us have 3 minutes tonight.
That clock started. Ladies and gentlemen of the council, thank you for choosing to be part of our community and for your leadership with what you do. Honorable Mayor, appreciate our conversation in the past. I'm here tonight in the hopes that you'll hear me beyond just hearing me, but you'll actually listen to me. I've tried numerous times to get information on the impact Intel will have on our water table. I have no idea how that's going to happen. Hopefully, we have that opportunity now to. I appreciate once again you talking to me prior to the meeting about some things. First, I'd like to address some positives. Jack Liggett and his street and city parks department, I really, truly appreciate the fact that they take care of that little bit of stretch from the trailhead on down to Concord. As you can see, I'm not a spring chicken, but I need my exercise. I walk my dog there. If you make that trip 4 times, you get about 4 miles in. So Jack, thank you for what you do with your folks down there. I know you're understaffed, but I know they always do address that. I'd like to thank the police department for what they do, of course. Don't know Chief Stewart there, but I do know one officer, and I want to bring to your attention what I think he does for our community, and that's Patrolman Officer Gary Hargraves. I've talked to Officer Hargraves a number of times in a situation, just, fortunately he's never pulled me over. Don't anticipate that. But I do want to let you know that he's very pro-Johnstown. I found him to be altruistic, polite, professional. And I also just found out that he's a combat Marine Corps vet, which is great to know, so that when the wolves are at the door, we got somebody like that to protect us, particularly against the evil. Which brings me to my next segue, the evil. Speaking of evil, that brings me to the sharks in suits known as New Albany Company. They represent the interests of New Albany and themselves and the other piranha trying to devour our community, but they have nothing to say about us. I've lived here for 22 years. Now granted, I'll look each of you in the eye and tell you, and I've already told the mayor, I don't live in Johnstown. I live 2 doors south of the Johnstown city limits. But I guarantee I'm going to be part of that here pretty soon. And it bothers me. I've lived here, like I said, my wife, I've raised my kids here. I've got trees planted on anniversaries, graduations, the whole thing. I was just told the other day by a commercial developer, quit thinking of your house as residential. It's going to be commercial. It's going to be worth a lot of money. This is my home. I've got my animals buried there. All 6 of them that we've had. I've got trees planted on my 30-year anniversary, crabapple, get it? I planted a crabapple for my wife, 38 years. The point is, I have a history there, as we all do. We all love this community, and the mayor is correct. You can't turn a blind eye to the development, but you can make sure you guide it the way we need to. I just found out coming to this meeting, I had to find out from a neighbor, and I just found out from him, it's true, they're putting a roundabout in. Do you know how I found out about mink? Having to stop on the road on Mink at 55 miles an hour and scan one of those yard signs to find out they're putting this stuff up. I lived here for 22 years. Where's the respect for us that live there? Nobody contacts. Now, maybe it's not your fault, But guarantee I'm going to the school board and I'm going to the township meeting as well. We'll let them know about it.
We'll extend you one more minute.
Okay, thank you.
you, Phil.
Last thing, let me just say, as a retired superintendent of schools, I read that they're proposing 1,220 low-income family apartments. Let's say they have one child for each one of those apartments. Okay, that's 915 new students. Where are we going to put them? Who's going to pay for that? We're already being taxed. Even if they ask for a 5 mil levy, that's going to be $770 more on my income. And I understand you folks are asking for an income. You think people are going to pass for that stuff? I'm just saying, these are all things you have to take into account. You're going to need ESL aids. I work for a major company that has warehouses. I find it interesting that they're going to put 250% of the land towards warehouses and industry, and only less than that, 25% or something like that, towards residential, and they're apartments. If these are so great, why aren't they on the east side of Mink, going into New Albany schools? They're giving this low income, and I'm a superintendent of schools. I'm retired. Jack will tell you, I'm speaking the truth here. We're not going to get the revenue that New Albany's going to get.
So you're at 4 minutes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That was a quick 3 minutes. Let me just
I'm done
fire
live.
it up. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir. We had no other requests to speak, so we will move to council committee reports.
Hold on one second,
Sorry.
please. We do have one.
Sorry, I thought we
No, you can. Sure. Ms. Ashley Carpenter. Again, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name's Ashley Carpenter. I am a graduate of Northridge. I lived in the Hartford community. Hartford is the only school standing. Alexandria obviously is gone and Homer is gone. And so, to me, there's been a lot of change over the years. There's been a lot of development, a lot of beautiful things. I moved away from Northridge and Johnstown because I couldn't wait to get away from the country and just wanted to be a part of the city. Now here I am, 36 years old. I have a 2 and a 3-year-old, and I could not wait to get back to Johnstown to raise my family. Why? Because I wanted to raise my kids and have deep roots here. I wanted them to know what it was like to have wide open spaces, to grow a garden, to have cows and chickens. And we built our dream home here. And I'm just one person, and I know there's a lot of families here. We don't know what that looks like anymore. The thought of an 8-lane bypass dissecting our town is very scary. The thought of crime increasing. Look at developments like Easton and Polaris. Yes, those are great things. It's bringing a lot of stores that we didn't have before, but guess what? It's also bringing sex trafficking. It's bringing shootings. It's bringing crime to our town that we thought has been safe this entire time. So I want you to consider that when you're thinking of development. Is our police and fire department ready for this? Is it just a one-way stream like Mike Dixon had talked about? Is the money just going back to New Albany, or is it really actually coming to fund the people of Johnstown? What are we doing to protect this community? What are we doing? Have you talked with Johnstown? What makes Johnstown Johnstown? What are we doing to preserve that? Not just our property, but the character of Johnstown. What makes us special? What makes us not? We don't want to look like New Albany. If I wanted to look like New Albany, I would live there. I did. I moved. I'm here. I'm planted here on 15 acres. And I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if someone's gonna come and tell me this land is no longer yours and a freeway's going through it, or we need to build a development. Look at the people that are living on Mink and have to look at until they built their properties. They wanted to have their dream land, and now they're looking at that. So I just want you to think of, yes, there are implications of if we don't develop at all, but I just pray that you all are making the calls and you all are making the shots. And it's not NACO telling you this is what you're gonna do with your land. They didn't want anything to do with Johnstown until all of this started to come, so just remember that. And I hope you guys hold your head high when you're making these decisions and not just being afraid of who's gonna take the next thing if you don't step up. Do what you can to protect us, protect your community, protect the schools, protect the crime in this area, and more than anything, protect this farmland. Take into consideration that once farmland is gone, it is gone. You cannot replace it. It's not like a puppy where you can just buy it again. What happens when farmland's gone? Food prices go up, because what happens? You don't have the land to raise it anymore or grow produce anymore, and the demand for produce goes up because you're bringing more people to the area. So again, I'm glad I'm not sitting in these seats because you guys have a lot of decisions, but I just want to make you think of, why did you guys come to Johnstown? What is your biggest fear of happening here? If somebody else takes this over, What I'm afraid of is this is just, Johnstown's no longer gonna be Johnstown. It's gonna be a bunch of buildings and a bunch of developments that somebody else called the shots on and told us what it was a good decision, but they didn't think about what that was gonna impact. Is Johnstown gonna look like Johnstown, the football games? Is it still gonna have the same feeling on a Friday night? Are you gonna wanna raise your kids in this community? Are you gonna be proud of Johnstown? Are you gonna look for the next sale of 5 acres on a town far, far away so you don't ever have to hear or see the dust of this mess? Again, thank you for your time and consideration of my voice.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to council committee reports. The first is planning and zoning. They met August 22nd. Their next meeting is next Tuesday, the 12th, at 6:30 in the council chambers. Mr. Green, is there anything to report?
Yeah, we had a big meeting for planning and zoning to talk about all of the development that's coming and see the first of that. We also talked about a local Airbnb situation and made a ruling on that. And that was pretty much the meat of the meeting.
Design Review Board also met on August 22nd. They're meeting again on the 12th at 5:30 in council chambers. Ms. Monroe or Sean, was there anything to report from that meeting?
There was a barn application for archery, and they wanted to re-site it, use a different material, so that application was approved. And you'll be seeing a new material and new siding on the archery building that exists out on 62.
Great. Safety and Service, they met today. Their next meeting is October 3rd at 5 PM. Mr. Orsini, was there anything from that meeting?
Safety and Service had a couple items on the agenda. One particular one was to bring a street that was overlooked in the initial legislation years ago into accordance with other similar streets as far as parking goes. You'll see that before the full council. Came with a 3-0 recommendation to present to council for passage. I don't see it in the packet here, but it may be for a future meeting.
Okay, anything else? That's it, okay. Finance had a special meeting on August 30th, since our prior meeting had to be canceled. Our next is on September 19th at 5 PM in the Administrative Conference Room. We had one item that we would like to propose to council. The Finance Committee would like to ask council for a yea or nay vote on the following. If the tax update is passed on November 7th, the city's new income will be used for the four main pillars, which are infrastructure, public safety, controlled growth, and our heritage. Actual percentages and amounts will be determined during each budget cycle. And so everyone knows, public safety would be improving police protection for residents and maintaining community safety. Infrastructure would be regularly maintaining and making needed repairs and improvements for our streets and sidewalks, supporting quality planning and engineering services. Controlled growth planning would be protecting sufficient green space and managing controlled development. And then one of the most important ones is heritage preservation, preserving and enhancing our historical and cultural areas of Johnstown, as well as our parks and recreation venues. It's been more than 40 years since the last increase in our income tax. Reminder that this tax update will not tax Social Security, pensions, interest, retirement, or investment income. This tax applies to all Johnstown residents, but also for those that live outside of Johnstown and work in Johnstown. And over 2/3 of our Johnstown residents will see no increase or pay less than they do now. So I'd like to ask for a vote if council would support these four pillars, and that's where the tax revenue would go. Would you like to say anything, Mr. Orsini, about this?
You summed it up well.
Okay, so I would just like to see a show of hands of council members that would support this by saying yay to use the funds for these four pillars.
Do you want to officially do a
Probably
roll
do a
call,
roll call
Tracy?
for that.
Roll call.
You want to do a roll call? Okay.
Yeah.
Charlie Kimball,
Yes.
Nicole Shep,
Yes.
Bob Orsini,
Yes.
John Merriman.
Yes.
Mayor Barnard,
Yes,
Brian Green.
Yes.
Sharon Hendren.
Yes.
awesome. Council, or finance met and talked about a few other things, but that's the only thing that's coming to council tonight, so. The next is Events Committee. They met August 17th. Their next is 9/20 at 5:30 in the council chambers. Is there anything from Events Committee they would like to report tonight?
Fireworks, I think Ben mentioned that before.
That will be on the 22nd, correct? Yes, it'll be 22nd after the football game. I think they're trying to plan for 10 o'clock for the launch, but it will depend on what time the football game gets over. If it's a fast-paced running game, the clock will run and the game will get over quick. They do have to wait for about a half hour after the game is over, so that those students and those people who want to get out can get out, and then they will launch the fireworks. So they're estimating about 10 p.m., so.
Mr. Mayor, may I say something?
Yes.
May I ask, they're not charging admission into the stadium after halftime, is that correct?
I believe you're correct.
So,
Is that right, Teresa? Yeah.
just so they know that people don't have to pay after halftime to get in and see the fireworks.
And it is the homecoming game, so it'll be a big game against Northridge that night. So please come out, it should be a good time. And this is the makeup for the 4th of July fireworks. Rules Committee, we need to set our next meeting. Do we want to do that tonight, or do we just want to?
We can talk about
If
it.
we can remember after the meeting to actually set, yes, we should try to set a date.
Okay, I believe Mr. Stainer has some things for that one. The go.
Committee.
Yes.
Yep.
And then Park and Recs, their next meeting is to be decided, so if they could get together and determine that one. We will move on to director reports. We're looking at our service department, water, sewer, street, and our service director. Since Mr. Fitch is here, if he wants to come up and give sewer, unless you're going to do all three.
Right there. I wasn't prepared for that. I'm just doing sewer tonight. For August, we treated a total flow of 17 million gallons. Our plant efficiency charts, they usually look good. Our ammonia removal rate was down a little bit this past month. Plant has since recovered, so we're in good shape there. Moving on to work highlights. A few sewer inspections, pulled biosolids out. The last item here, we had our biosolids pressed down for some maintenance this past month along the bottom side of the manifold housing. There was some corrosion occurring there where the restrictor arms ride. This was making it tough whenever we go to clean it and wash it, shutting it down. And also with this being a steel unit, unfortunately, this is something we have to deal with. So Fournier Industries, the company we purchased the press from originally, they have since started making these in stainless steel, of course, a couple years after we had got ours, for this reason in particular. So when we go to expand or add on, we definitely want to consider rehabbing these old units with stainless components. There's Paul Butler in the photos. He's the star of the show there. Doing a fine job. Moving on to bulk sewer and water. Our septic receiving station, we treated around 1.1 million gallons there. And then our bulk water, we sold close to 300,000. Any questions?
You said something happened at the beginning, or in August, that skewed your guys' reports. What was that?
The ammonia, yeah, 99% of the time it's due to our septic receiving. Just those impulse loads were hard to control.
Okay.
Unless we were to test every load, kind of get some spikes here and there.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Correct me where I'm wrong, but this time of year, every year, I get questions about why you can smell the sewer plant when you couldn't before. And my understanding is when it gets cool in the evening and it stays cool through the morning, the cooler temperatures keep the odor closer to the ground. So when it's warm in the morning, up it goes. When it stays cooler, you can start to smell it. There's nothing catastrophic happening over there?
No, nothing.
Okay.
Most of the time, just if we're aerating everything, the odor's usually controlled. It's just when we're decanting, we turn our air off. We do have some septic conditions when we kick that air back on, or if we're hauling biosolids out, that's when you can really smell it. So maybe it's just.
But we're in good shape. It's a function of the process.
Yes, and there's also farmers around the area
Yeah.
that are spreading chicken manure, so that's really where a lot of the odor comes from, not Johnstown wastewater plant.
We were removing biosolids last week.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if it was last week, that's a big part of
I
it.
usually get those questions when, what's going on? Are we drowning in sewage? So I appreciate the information.
We are in good shape, yes.
Anybody else? Thank you, sir. Mr. Liggett, if you're going to do water, street, and service director.
Yes, I'll start and I'll keep it short. I'm gonna do the water. Terry Nichols, chief operator's on vacation. this
Excuse me,
week.
Jack. There's a Jeep out front whose alarm's going off.
No Jeep?
You do like a public information. Black Jeep with a license plate. Not a license
It would
plate,
be-
but it is a black Jeep.
be
Okay, Jack.
gutsy to do it.
Okay, yeah, just the highlights. For August, we produced roughly 17 million gallons. Shut-offs were up a little high. Talked with the office, we're not really sure what that was about. We're normally around 35 to 40. We had 69 shut-offs last month. Everything was off and turned back on and was done correctly. The water department had 6 hours of training, and Terry and myself have been working on the lead inventory for the EPA. I do want to take you to the last page in the graph. You can see that our production, although up from last month, is still lower than the 2 previous years at this time. We have noticed since those 2 major leaks were repaired, we have trimmed 2 hours of process time off of the plant, and that seems to remain consistent, so that's good. So, the water loss is got to be down because we're producing less water. Any questions on the water department? I will jump straight into the street department. Dan is not on vacation, he's sick today, so he called me this morning. So I'm just gonna give you a quick update here. 5 street lights, which has been pretty consistent, have been switched over to LED. As you know, we're just doing that as the other lights go bad. I do, under street maintenance, want to mention a couple things. 15 ton of hot mix asphalt's been used, and we've been doing the asphalt grinding. We borrowed Pataskala's, and we want to thank them, Grinder, as we could not find one to rent, so they let us borrow theirs to see how this grinding would work versus just pulling the asphalt out with the backhoe. It's a much quicker process. We can get more done by doing that. Also wanted to comment, the street department has repaired 200 feet of curb on Tyler Place, which was good, and programmed the school signs. Underwater maintenance, where we get assistance from the street department because they have the hydrovac equipment. 2 mainline valves in Leafy Dale were hydrovac'd. They will have to be repaired shortly as the stems are broke on those valves. We are awaiting parts. And then the back page, you'll just see the couple pictures of the guys maintaining and working on the lights out in the system. Any questions on the street department?
What was the reason for all the curb repair on Tyler Place?
Well, over in Concord specifically, a lot of the curb areas, the concretes begin to break up and come out. So where it's crumbling and where those cracks are, we're going in there and just cutting out that small section and patching with concrete in those areas. So approximately 200 feet of Tyler Place was hand mixed and replaced as we go, because they're just small areas. There's not enough there to bring in a cement truck and do a large area. We're just fixing the areas where it's broke up and cracked out.
Just deterioration over time?
Yes, those curbs were put in originally, I can't think of what
90,
year it was put
98?
in, but it's 98.
99, something like that?
And they're time to be replaced, but right now, we're just doing more of a repair than a total replacement.
Great, thank you.
Okay, on the main service department report, I just have projects I'm gonna bring you up to date on. Item 1, the new water tower. I had what I believe will be a final walkthrough. We have very few details. We have some leveling, some reseeding to be done, and that project will be complete and coming off the list finally. Water plan update, met with them September 1st. I know this is August report, but I was gonna add it in there. We have made a decision to go with the 500,000 gallon expansion, and so the engineers are full throttle on moving forward with getting that done for the water plant. 3, on that same day, we met and discussed with Jacobs again on wastewater plant update here, and we are going to go with a 1.2 MGD expansion there. And because these are batch systems we're putting in, it can be easily expanded from 2.4 to 3.6 to 4.8, which will be the build out of that site as it is needed to balance out the expense versus income coming in on those facilities. East Jersey project, had another walkthrough. We've had a number of walkthroughs on East Jersey getting it done, but we're down to a small punch list now where I want some reseeding and some leveling on some meter pits to get the yard straightened up. With the curb, sidewalks, and road, that work is all completed in good shape. We're just working off the sides. The Pulte Housing Development punch list, not much change, nothing to report there. New to this is the new development going in on Concord East. They started installing sanitary lines last week, so we've been doing a regular inspection on that, and all is going through well. Any questions on any of these projects?
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Wiggett. Appreciate it. We're going to move to our legislation. We have no tabled legislation tonight. Our first is, our public hearing of legislation is ordinance 15-2023, an ordinance approving the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances as part of the various component codes of the codified ordinances of Johnstown, Ohio, and declaring an emergency. It's a lot of ordinances words. Would you like to explain this one, Mr. Sarah?
I will, but I wouldn't do it service because this is really a clerk of council function.
Oh,
because
it's Teresa.
All of your updates, and I'll let her carry it away if you want, or I can.
Sure, that's fine. Once a year, we provide all of our council-approved ordinances passed to Walter Drain, a company that publishes them for us. So they go through, they add everything that council's passed for the year, laws, and they also go through the ORC for any updates that need to be made. So this is just a list of everything that's changing.
Okay. Is there any questions or comments from council on this? Hearing none. I would like to first make a motion that we waive the first reading, as this is an emergency ordinance. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Sorry, is that Bob?
Yes,
Yep.
Bob.
This is a motion to waive the second reading.
Yes.
This is the first reading, okay. Nicole Shook,
Yes.
Bob Orsini,
Yes.
John Merriman,
Yes.
Mayor Barnard,
Yes.
Ryan Green,
Yes.
Sharon Hendren.
Yes.
Charlie Campbell.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any questions or comments from the citizens on this? Hearing none. Do I have a motion to move forward with this ordinance?
I'll make a motion to pass ordinance 15-2023 as written.
I'll second.
Bob Orsini,
Yes.
John Merriman,
Yes.
Mayor Barnard,
Yes.
Ryan Green,
Yes.
Sharon Hendren,
Yes.
Charlie Campbell,
Yes.
Nicole Shook.
Yes.
Okay, the next is ordinance 16-2023, an ordinance setting the cost for the certificate of registration fee and the construction permit fees for the right-of-way program and declaring an emergency. This is an item that we get every year from, is it the county engineers? They calculate our right-of-way, and then this is sent to the utility companies, and they have to pay us for this. We do this as an emergency, as it comes in usually late. We've got to get this out there to them so they can be billed for the utilities, and we can get the money in this year. So that's the reason why we're moving to waive the first, or the second reading, and just do this as an emergency. Did I explain it all, Sean?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a variation in there. I don't know if it's worth going into the process, but the information does come from a engineering firm, or gentleman that we've used over the last several years.
It's not the county.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like I said, the concept's there, but some of the details, but I don't want to bore everybody with all that fun stuff. If you really want to know, ask me later or Jack later and we can fill you in.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we waive the second reading and declare this an emergency.
I'll second.
John Merriman,
Yes.
Mayor Barnard,
Yes.
Ryan Green,
Yes.
Sharon Hendren,
Yes.
Charlie Campbell,
Yes.
Nicole Shook,
Yes.
Bob Orsini.
Yes.
And for those of you here tonight, usually with an ordinance, it is two readings, a reading tonight and then usually a reading in 2 weeks. We're doing this so we can move this process up and get these build costs out, so
Purely procedural matter.
it's purely procedural, so. Does citizens have any questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, does council? Do I have a motion to move forward with ordinance 16-2023?
Make a motion to pass ordinance 16-2023 as written.
I'll second.
Mayor Barnard,
Yes.
Brian Green,
Yes.
Sharon Hedren.
Yes.
Charlie Campbell,
Yes.
Nicole Shook,
Yes.
Bob Senior,
Yes.
John Merriman.
Yes.
Perfect. 2 for 2. Resolution 2023-23. A resolution authorizing the city manager to sign a letter of support for the South Licking Watershed Conservancy District. Mr. Stainer, if you'd like to explain this one.
Sure. So they are applying for a grant of funds, and we generally try to be supportive of our county soil and water programs that exist. This one doesn't have a direct impact on our way. This specific area is more in the southern part of Licking County, but like I said, we try to be supportive of the soil and water district, and she was not able to be here tonight. Last meeting, she was at the Hartford Fair as well, so waiving those, she spread pretty thin, but that's the general gist. They're going for a grant. They're just trying to get letters of support throughout the area. They're looking at some of the flooding issues that are over near 70 that happen. We're obviously at the headwaters. They're kind of at the receiving end of a lot of those, and so they're looking for some funding to help address some of those issues.
Perfect. Do our citizens have any questions or comments on this? Hearing none, does council?
Just for clarification, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
there is no financial component from Johnstown's
Great
perspective
question.
on this?
I would not have recommended it. There is no financial obligation for us, just a letter of support. And this is consistent oftentimes whenever you do a grant. If authorizing agency that looks at the grant wants to make sure that there's community buy-in. And so this is a way for us to be participating and for that check to be, or that box to be checked, but no financial participation on our end, so.
Okay. Do we have a motion for resolution 2023-23?
Make a motion. I'll second.
Brian Green,
Yes.
Sharon Hedren,
Yes.
Charlie Campbell,
Yes.
Nicole Shook,
Yes.
Bob Orsini,
Yes.
John Merriman,
Yes.
Mayor Barnard.
Yes. Okay, next up is resolution 2023-24, an ordinance establishing and amending certain fees for planning and zoning services provided by the city of Johnstown and setting aside all other fees previously established. And this will go to Mr. Stainert to explain this one.
Sure. So if you remember, we just put in place a temporary use permit. Now that we have a temporary use permit in place, we need to have a fee structure that's associated with it. So looking at the fee structures, and I can tell you where I've gotten some of the numbers and the logic. Temporary use permit probably more closely mirrors a zoning map amendment because you're allowing a use on a particular piece of property that's not currently allowed. So the only other time that would happen is a zoning map amendment that would then allow for that particular use to be utilized. So our fee for that is at $600, I believe. Let me double check. Yes, $600. This probably has a little bit more involved with it. And there is probably a heavier application because of the use is not consistent with the general environment around it. So putting it at $750 per half acre, and then if you'll note, that's for currently paved and developed sites. For undeveloped sites and unpaved sites, we put that requirement at $1,500. There's usually a higher intensity that exists on a gravel parking lot. You've got dust control. It's a little bit more of a change than what's already there, and I'll use the reference of a currently existing parking lot. Let's say you want to have a Christmas tree sale or something along those lines. It may not be an allowed use, but this would be a temporary use. You could operate that, come in for the permit, but some of the infrastructure already exists to allow for that business, or at least that temporary use. So 600 to 750. The other one, the infrastructure doesn't exist. So the impact on that particular piece of land and the residents that are surrounding it is going to be much greater. And because of that, there's more work that we have to do to safeguard that those provisions can be put in place, as well as just the general impact on the community as a whole. We feel like we should have some compensation for allowing that particular use with the impact that's going to be had. If there's any other questions you have, feel free to fire away.
So for the residents here, for an example of this, the area across from Wits right now, that is a temporary use permit right now for that area. We didn't have the permit in place when it started. This is the reason why we're doing this, is areas like that. That's a laydown site for Columbia Gas, and so that we have it in our books to be able to do it right in the future. So that's a perfect example of the non-paved one, so. Do our citizens have any questions or comments?
I guess I do. Once you provide this temporary alternative, what's to say they don't stay there?
Oh, so there are
Great question.
provisions.
So in the temporary use permit, there is a time limit of just 12 months. And then after that, they would then have to come back and be reissued another permit, or they would be in violation. And the fine is up to $1,000 per day. That would obviously go to the mayor's court, magistrate, and then they would make a decision on how much the fee should be associated with that. So, yeah, the intent is for it not to stay there permanently. If ever a situation would arise where they wanted to stay there permanently, my recommendation to council would be, or to the applicant, would be go for a zoning map change or for a ordinance wording change that would allow for that specific use in there to make it permanent, if that helps.
Does that answer your question?
Here we go. Follow up. So let's just use the example down there across from Wits. Say they vacate that and leave that stuff there. Who cleans it up and when?
So another piece of the ordinance that exists, there is a provision put in place that they have to take the site back to the original or better. And the reason that council was proactively going about this as quickly as they can is, in the past, we didn't have any ordinance in place. So technically, it's a violation of the current zoning, but that site had been used in the past, not something we wanted to continue. And this was really a good act on council to try to eliminate those types of situations. And I'll go a step further. They don't have to allow for that particular use to be done in that area anymore. If this council feels that the applicant is not going to be a value added, and for whatever reason they feel that that's not consistent with that neighborhood has changed, or the adequate screening cannot be provided, this council does not have to give them a temporary use permit. It can be denied. So hopefully that tries to answer some questions. There's a lot of information in the temporary use permit that I think would help identify a lot of the questions that you have. And that was, I want to believe, about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, that was before the board. Takes 30 days to go into effect. Just timing of it. Immediately after the 30 days, I'm now bringing this before you so that it's now enacted by ordinance, and now we have a fee structure. So, great question, Seth.
Thank you. Anyone on council?
Mr. Mayor, so, but the property we're talking about across from Wits, are they grandfathered in to not have to follow this ordinance at this point?
You want me to try to answer that?
Yeah.
So, when that site started to transform, I immediately got in contact with the property owner, not the property owner, but the business, we'll say, that's located there, and notified them that that is not consistent with the GCC2 zoning. Nowhere in the GCC2 zoning is there wording that says laydown site. Trying to work through the applicant, they'd already made a huge commitment to that site. I'm not sure if you're aware of the work that they're doing, but it is a gas line for the Intel site. So rather than try to litigate this thing through courts, because the project is so important that it would probably end up there, deciding that maybe we could rework our ordinances, that way we could have a workable solution, knowing that this is not a long-term situation, but the village can be compensated for its efforts and its time associated with that particular piece of property. So I'm trying to find a happy medium, but it would not be grandfathered in. They were notified that they were in violation, and I took it upon myself to say, hey, let me see if we can get a temporary use permit in through council, and then they still have to actually apply for a temporary use permit, which will go before this body, and then you all will decide whether that is going to be an allowed use there. And if it's not, then this administration will have the authorization basically to tell our code enforcement officer to go down there, issue a fine, it will go before the magistrate, and they'll decide on a fee per day. And all this was communicated to the business operating out of there. I would say they were probably misinformed from the conversation that I had with them. So it was not their intent to do anything illegal. It was not their intent to try to do anything wrong. They said, what do you need from us? We're more than willing to accommodate. It was our understanding that this was allowed. I said, well, maybe that's used to be allowed, but not anymore. So
Are they willing to put up a fence?
I believe they'll be willing to do whatever you ask them to do. And if that is a request that you would have, and it's consistent with the majority of the board for that provision to be put in there, that could be something that you could request. I do know that there is a screening provision in the temporary
There
use
is,
permit.
yeah.
We had
Yep.
that,
Oh, I know that. that's my biggest thing.
Yeah,
Is
I
that
I think that's a,
I don't want to see the circus, so. I understand it's important, but,
no.
Again, we're trying to catch up to things.
Absolutely.
yeah, I know what we're doing. I
Yeah.
just feel that, I just want to make sure they weren't grandfathered in.
Nope.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
For the record, I just want to make it known that this did come through Finance Committee. We talked through it thoroughly, and came with a 3-0 recommendation for passage.
Only two things I had on it were, do you think it's high enough? Because I think you're gonna have an unattractive commercial use typically. This is not gonna be something a
We
homeowner.
talked about that.
Yeah, this isn't gonna be something a homeowner does, so.
And the
it's gonna
numbers
be
were
an unattractive commercial
The
site.
numbers were derived from other communities, surrounding
Okay.
communities, some close, some further away, similar size and stature.
That was me. I mean, I agree.
Thanks, John.
We talked through that. If that's
Okay.
something we could amend now, if there's a meaningful reason to raise it,
If
lower it,
you guys
whatever.
debated it, I'm
How big's
good
that
with it.
space?
We didn't have an immense amount of detail on why.
One of
15 or
the
something, it's like
reasons
14.
was with like the paved one. Like Sean brought up, like if someone's, Boy Scouts are going to sell Christmas trees, we're going to make it very difficult for them to do something like that by having.
Right.
Now, for the site like this, cost is probably not
Yeah,
that big of an option.
that's my point. I don't
we
wanna hurt
talked
the
about this too.
residents, but.
It's
I
a
wanna-
community asset, right?
Yeah.
These properties potentially a community asset, and the community should be compensated for their use.
Right.
So I'm open to all discussions on fees. The reason they're different is pretty clear, but why it's $750 and not $1,000 and $2,000? We had to come up with something that fit into the rest of the fee structure
Gotcha.
without sending everything to zoning for a rezoning at $600.
How big's that one?
Because I know it's gonna have follow-up. There's obviously gonna be follow-up on it. There's gonna be man-hours put into these, and making sure that they are following, all the protocols, things like that. It's gonna have follow-up, so pricing needs to reflect that.
So for reference, and I never want to single out a specific property, but I will give this property as a reference baseline, and then I can also reference some other properties. But for a baseline reference, the property is larger than the actual area that's being utilized. So I would say that the fee should be associated to the area that's being utilized. Now, if you give
In
me
the future,
direction.
it'll be what's fenced, right?
Right.
That'll be an
There you
easy
go. It's-
designation.
It has
Including the
stormwater
screening.
management. Yeah,
Including the
it's-
screen, oh, yes.
It's got stormwater
Yeah,
management.
That one would be
exists on there.
31,000, right?
So, right now, the site sits at roughly about 2.7 acres. Now, it's obviously gonna be a round up situation, not a round down, so that's gonna bring that site in at 3 acres. And if you do the math on that, you can derive your own fee structure that would be applicable to that particular site. So, that's based on an approximate, like I said, I'm trying to use an aerial of the county, without physically going out there and measuring where the silt fence is to the other silt fence. I'm trying to give you an approximation, so.
Do you have a recommendation, Ryan, or you want to go with this?
Nope, I just wanna make sure we're taking a look at it thoroughly.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, do we have a motion?
Make a motion to pass resolution 2023-24 as written.
I'll second.
Sharon Hendren,
Yes.
Charlie Campbell,
Yes.
Nicole Shep,
Yes.
Paul Orsini,
Yes.
John Merriman.
Yes.
Mayor Barnard,
Yes.
Ryan Green.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna have a little change up here. I make a motion to enter executive session for the purpose to review a collective bargaining strategy. As part of this executive session, all members of council will be included, along with the city manager, the chief of police, our finance director, and via phone, our labor attorney, Mr. Dave Riepenhoff. We will move to the conference room to conduct this executive session. Do I have a second?
Second. Second.
Charlie Campbell,
Yes.
Nicole Shep,
Yes.
Paul Orsini,
Yes.
John Merriman.
Yes.
Mayor Barnard,
Yes.
Ryan Green.
Yes.
Sharon Hendren.
Yes.
And we will be back.
Typed up the executive session.
We are our own water source. We have 4 wells on the youth league, JYA youth league property. We're contracted with them. We have 3 wells that are 380 foot deep and 1 well that's 168 foot deep. Yeah. And within those depths, there are 3 different aquifers. 2 in the deep section, 1 in the upper section.
I understood by talking to the folks down here at Ramville Mill,
Okay.
there was gonna be a second tower, put on the water tower.
Correct and incorrect.